What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the GrownCast. And today we're going to be talking about knowledge and wisdom. We're probably going to do a 2 or 3 part series of knowledge and wisdom. And so first, I wanted to really define what knowledge and wisdom are. And so this may be an oversimplified version, but that's okay. And the oversimplified version is this: knowledge is the information and wisdom is the application. One more time. Knowledge is the information and wisdom is the application. And I think about that. My grandfather told me to read Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. And I realized why they're so important, because the wisest man to ever walk this earth was Solomon. And he's in the Bible. And it's so important because he goes through in Ecclesiastes saying, I've done everything under the sun. I've had more wisdom than anybody else or any other king of Jerusalem. But what is it for? What is this all for? It's all meaningless. It's all chasing after the wind. And I think about that and was like, okay, well, let's kind of break down what wisdom and knowledge are. And for me, I know that's important for me because I'm learning. And when you learn more, you kind of get so cocky. It's like, yeah, I know this. But then somebody always comes along and says, hey, can you really apply this? Like, it's great that you know this, but are you able to really apply the knowledge that you learned? And I think that's where the difference between knowledge and wisdom comes in, because it says, hey, the beginning of knowledge is seeking the Lord, fearing the Lord. And that is so vital and so important. So many people may know what the Bible says. Like myself, I'm a preacher's kid. My dad taught me and beat the Bible into me as a child. And I learned verses. I can spit them, I can quote them or whatever. But it's like, can you really apply? Are you really applying what you're learning? And I realized that in my life, I wasn't. And just the honest truth, I just wasn't. And so when it came down to me having my relationship with God for myself, he kind of started giving me that understanding and that wisdom. Hey, I went through this and this is why. Or, hey, now I see this differently because I need it differently, because I've had that experience now. So I know, okay, I can't do that. And I realized, I read it again. I'm like, man, that's so true. And I think about the same thing from a practical standpoint, like with engineering, right? A lot of the things that we learned in engineering school, we will never use in our lives. If we're not in that engineering field or we're in supply chain, we're in something different, we may never use that in our lives. We have that knowledge up here, but it's useless if you can't apply it. And I think I read an article and it kind of brought up the point that you can have knowledge without wisdom, but you can't have wisdom without knowledge. And so in that knowledge, a lot of times you understand, like you have the information, like you have all the information, you got the textbooks, you read all the books, the people that wrote the books. You have all this information, but does that really help you apply? Like, you may know how to do it. You may know the formulas. You may know what pieces to put where. But unless you can actually put it together and put it into practice, what good is it for? What good is it for? And I know for me, that's the story of my life. It's like, my mama always say, son, you know better, but why aren't you doing better? And it kind of, as she kind of said that more and more as I got older, it was like, I get it. I see now. I know what the right thing is, but I'm not doing the right thing. Or I know what I should do in this situation, but I'm not doing that. And so for me, it's like you can get so caught up in the knowledge that we have, and we can get so cocky and saying, oh, I know this. And that was another issue that I ran into as a kid. I remember in 3rd grade, it was like, I felt like I was just a math guru. Like I knew all the math in the world. Nobody could tell me anything. And I realized that I started pointing out what other people did and how they messed up in the math problem. And what happened is when I had that knowledge and I had that haughty spirit and I was prideful in that, what happened was when I was wrong or when I messed up, it was like a big bubble burst, and it's like my life shattered. It was like, oh my gosh, I was wrong. Oh no, I'm supposed to be this smart person. And now I started to doubt myself. I was like, man, do I really know this, etc. So that's why you can't really lean on knowledge so much. It's good to have it, but it all goes back to that application. Can you really use it to learn? Can you use it to really apply the knowledge that you learn? I think wisdom is the same way. Wisdom, you have to apply it. You have to apply what you learn, because it's just knowledge, and knowledge can be useless at times. And I think about Solomon, one of the wisest people to ever live. And it's so funny. He may have had all the wisdom and all the knowledge, but until he really sought after God, it did nothing. Like he didn't get that wisdom from himself. He got that wisdom from God. So always, always, always remember that knowledge is the information, but wisdom is the application. And that is another episode of the GrownCast, knowledge versus wisdom. Thank you.